Hello, pickle jar.
What does that mean?
I don't know. We need a new phrase.
That is nothing to do with anything. You could have said hello bubble tea. That would be more appropriate for today's episode. But
I love bubble tea.
Pickle jar, and
maybe I'm still reeling from pickleball with Shammy.
Oh my gosh. We have so many guests that I can't wait to introduce. And Natasha, I have wanted to have on this podcast for so long. I know that Cold Tea Collective is really pioneering the way for telling Asian Canadian stories for Asian Canadians by Asian Canadians, and it's a really great episode that talks about, there's just all of these gems about how to build community, how to authentically build community, and by example, someone who I look up to so much. Natasha has just had a baby. She looks like she has everything together, and by that I don't mean that she pretends to have everything together. She's just so open and honest and generous with her information. So if you are thinking about being a mother and you're like me, very anxious about the concept of it for whatever reasons, if you are looking at how to build something new and get equal buy-in from the people who are involved in that cause that you want to run for, this is your episode. This is the show that is going to show you that it's not just possible, but you can be sustainable, thrive, happy, have fun, have a laugh while you're doing it. Natasha really just brings that all to the forefront for me.
I couldn't say anything more.
You just said pickle jar and ruined my day.
Jar.
Yeah, that's it.
Yes,
that's what you have to add. Okay, enjoy Natasha Jung and Cold Tea Collective.
You're listening to Bombshell Brunches, where your hosts Raquel Rudenberg and Kristina Lau sip and spill with badass babes every Tuesday morning.
Tea time with Natasha Jung, who is the founder, editor-in-chief, and executive producer of Cold Tea Collective, one of my favorite collectives in the whole world, a media publication for, by, and about Asian millennials in North America. Natasha has previously partnered with global brands Dove and Refinery 29. That's with Cold Tea Collective. Natasha's experience as a broadcast journalist, producer, and marketer have led her to interview cast members of Crazy Rich Asians, Shang-Chi, and more. PR Newswire has named Cold Tea Collective as one of the 10 top-notch Asian American news sites to follow. In 2021, Natasha was named a community builder in BC Business's Women of the Year Awards, and Cold Tea Collective was recognized by the BC Multiculturalism and Anti-Racism Awards. Natasha is a founding advisor for the Diversity and Inclusion Leadership Council with the Greater Vancouver Board of Trade and has served on several non-profit boards over the last decade. Her dedication to community has also been recognized by the United Global Chinese Women's Association of Canada and Deloitte Canada. Outside of work, Natasha is a new mom, and when she isn't taking care of her 4-month-old son, she's on the hunt for the best bubble tea and other Asian desserts. So, clearly an underachiever that we have zero time for, and we're going to have a super serious conversation with.
Very serious, no smiling.
No smile. We don't smile. No, we don't smile. Yeah. Also, another one of our friends loves bubble tea, Carmela. So shout out to Carmela from the 3.7 initiative, which I think we both know people from that. And we'll have to do a hunt for bubble tea at some point. We'll just
me too. I love bubble tea.
Love bubble
Do
off.
it.
I got addicted. I got so addicted in university when I was in Hong Kong. I got super addicted
that's
to
the good
bubble
stuff
tea
too.
every single day. Oh, it's the good stuff. And I would like be late for lectures and they'd be like, why are you late? And I'd be like hopped up on sugar. Like, these are my cup noodles, not a bubble tea, but I'd be hopped up on sugar and be like, I just has to be bubble tea. And I was like, I have a problem. It's so sugary. Yeah. Welcome, Natasha. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much
today.
for having me. I feel like it's been a really long time coming. So, Kristina, correct me if I'm wrong. We haven't actually met in person, have we? And this is my first time interacting with Raquel,
when we do,
right? But when we do, we're going for bubble tea, obviously.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, I'm just going to hug you for like 5
sounds
minutes
great.
and be like, my hero. But in all seriousness, I know, Natasha, whenever we jump onto any social things, I'm not even kidding. I'm like, it's Natasha. She's my hero. And everyone's like, that's really creepy. I'm like,
No.
not sorry. I'm not sorry.
You are too kind. Oh my
It's a real
gosh.
thing.
Yeah, no, it's really just like truly an honor to be chatting with you. You two just do such amazing work. You're so fun. Yeah, just happy to be chatting with you. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Yay.
Yes.
Well, thank you for being here. So I want to know, first off, tell everybody where you grew up, what made you want to start the Cold Tea Collective, and also, share us a little bit about the name, because I think that's a really fun story too.
All right. So I'll start with your first question. So where I grew up. So I am a second generation Chinese Canadian. My mom immigrated from Hong Kong. My dad was born here. I grew up in Richmond. I currently live in Vancouver, the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. I've been living in Vancouver for about 8 years now. And that's kind of like where I grew up, kind of thing. But growing up, I didn't really feel super connected to my Chinese heritage, I wouldn't say. And it probably wasn't until maybe about university where I started to think a lot more about identity. And even then, not anywhere near the level as how much I'm thinking about it now as an adult. And of course, after I started Cold Tea Collective in 2016. So I guess that kind of brings me to, how we started Cold Tea Collective. But my background is in marketing, media, and education. So done it, on a volunteer basis as well as professionally, marketing, communications, PR, events, all that fun stuff. I was also a television producer for a little bit of time for a local community TV channel, and it was actually an event that I was covering as a producer and host. It was an Asian film festival, and that was kind of the first time I really felt that there was a part of me that I had yet to explore when it came to my identity. So I just really, really vividly remember just sitting in the audience of this film festival, and it was actually a set of short films playing, and I saw these short films, and not only did I see this talent on screen, this beautiful imagery, but I saw stories of people that looked like me, that have a similar background as me, that have gone through the same experiences as me, and that really made me feel a number of different things. But really, for the most part, it made me feel, I don't know, I guess like inspired or energized to explore what that meant. What did that feeling mean? And if I could recreate that feeling for myself as well as for other people. And so during that time, I was actually, just kind of freelancing and doing the producer host thing. But before that, I had full on career in marketing. Prior to that, I actually got let go from a job because I wasn't performing. I wasn't performing because I was depressed, and I was depressed because I wasn't doing work in line with my values. And so just kind of took a little bit of a detour to live out my teenage dream as a TV host, if you will. It's not quite much music, but it was okay for the time. But much music is back now.
Apparently it's coming back.
It is back.
It wasn't part of my childhood, but I've heard much about much music.
Oh, excellent. And Raquel, did you grow up with much music?
Yes,
Yeah.
I definitely did. Yeah.
Is this
Canadian.
This is Canadian, right? Or is it Canadian and American?
It's Canadian, then MTV is the American one.
I watched MTV as a kid. I don't think we got much music.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
So I only
it's
had
very
MTV.
specifically Canadian. But yeah, so I mean, fun fact, I did actually intern at MTV Canada right out of high school, before they moved out to Toronto, and then it became like a different name and a different network and stuff. But so I've always kind of like been in and around
Very
media.
cool.
But at that time in my life when I was very just kind of like felt really disconnected, I just needed to take a step back, explore my creative outlets, but also really just kind of deconstruct what had happened to me, like how I led myself to kind of be in a position where I was working in this job where I was really unhappy. How did I let myself get to that place? Why didn't I explore that teenage dream that I had, to be in broadcast or media? When clearly I had an interest in it because, I mean, as I just said, I was interning at MTV Canada before, like for like really early on, like right out of high school kind of thing, right? And so it was about 10 years after that where I found myself just kind of like, I need to do something about this, right? And so in order to help me kind of explore that, I wrote an article. But when I say article, it's really just like a really long Facebook post at that time. It was 2016 or 2015, actually. Um, just trying to like explain what I had gone through, explain, how I got through it or was trying to get through it as well. And from there, I apparently encouraged others to share their stories as well. And so what we ended up doing is myself and my co-founder at the time ended up, inviting these people to write these stories and put it on a platform. We put our stories on Medium at first. I'll get to the name in a bit because the name, they took a long time to actually think about, but then when we figured it out, we were like super happy about it. But yeah, so really it just started off with like myself and a couple of people that I didn't really even know that decided that we wanted to share our stories, just kind of unfiltered, raw, put them online, and hopefully that would serve as a piece of inspiration or empowerment for others that might be going through the same struggles, and that of course also happen to be Asian Canadian. So that's kind of the very humble beginnings of where we started from, and certainly we're still like humble. We're still, I think, a long way to go, but now we have over 25 volunteers across Canada and the US producing content. So we have writers, editors, administrative staff, like creative staff. We have, a podcast that like I kind of rarely produce just because it's as you know, it takes time, right? So that's why I fully admire what you're doing
Yes.
with Bombshell Brunches. It's amazing. And yeah, and since then we've achieved like a bunch of different things. But more than that, I think what's really cool is that we've really built a community, and a community of people who are really values driven and values focused. And at the end of the day, I truly believe that storytelling can create community and bring people together. So that's really at the core of what Cold Tea Collective is all about.
And I think Cold Tea also, if I may, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's also a super connector. Like Cold Tea serves as not just a platform, but the proverbial tentacles that go out into the greater community to be able to draw people not just in but through. And through Cold Tea Collective, you have stories. I remember reading one recently about the tea ceremony that someone had lost their grandfather, and that was a really big ritual for them. And it really got me thinking. It kind of sparks an inspiration. It sparks solidarity, but then it also sparks conversation with like-minded people. And for me, I struggle a lot with the identity side of things, and I've had conversations with friends of mine who are Asian Canadian. They're full Asian. And to me, it's been a really difficult conversation as I've grown up navigating being from Hong Kong, but not accepted because I'm not fully Hong Kong Chinese, but then not being accepted in another culture. And then having this kind of Asian Canadian community where no one's ever questioned my validity. No one's ever said like, oh, but are you Chinese enough? Are you Asian enough to have a voice? And I think that Cold Tea Collective, for me, what I found was that it was a platform by which I could observe, I could take as much as I wanted to, but then I could also reach out to somebody, whether it was social media or whether it ended up being Natasha. We ended up having a really great conversation, and it just became something where if Natasha wasn't able to be the exact support I was kind of looking for or could answer a question, she always knew someone who could. And that is such a wonderful way to build a community based on, what looks like a podcast or looks like a media platform. It's so much more than that, if I can add to that.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think it's one of those things where it's definitely, a byproduct of, I think, the stories that we're able to tell. One of the core, I guess, principles, if you want to call them that, of the stories that we write, the content that we produce, is that we tell the stories for us, by us. And so what I mean by that is, we're not writing for a white audience. We're not writing for people who want to try to understand what it means to be Asian Canadian or Asian American. Is just sure, like if those folks that want to learn and educate themselves come to our site and they read and it helps them get a better understanding. That's great, but I think what that helps us with is to remove that layer of explanation, what we call, actually our former editor-in-chief, Kristina, you know him, Hosea, would call an explanation. So explaining why things are a certain way in Asian culture, in order to, yeah, exactly.
Right.
So it's kind of like, sitting down with, I kind of equate it to, sitting down with, an old friend, that you can just kind of jump right into it. You strip away the different layers and just kind of get down to the core of it. And that's what I want people to feel like when they are, reading our content or engaging with our content, and not feel like they have to explain or put in parentheses like, oh, this is what this means, that they can just kind of let it out, because that way you can actually get to the heart of the matter without having to be distracted by, I guess, having to explain yourself.
The superfluous explanations that are culturally specific, that once you get past those things, if you spend all of your time and energy explaining, and I think this is a really big piece that I want to talk about later, is that anti-racism piece and systemically deconstructing a lot of the racist systems and infrastructures that are in place. A lot of it is, if you spend so much time explaining why something is, you can't spend any more time, or people are exhausted by the time you get to where it needs to
100%.
go. And
well,
I think that,
and you can lose people halfway. So if they disagree with something in your explanation, you don't even get to the rest of it. You've already lost them. So we talk about that a lot with Bombshells as well, that we want to invite people on to tell their stories, to discuss things, and to do it in a organic way, that we don't want to necessarily be talking about the whys or something is happening, and people can either decide on their own to subscribe to it or not, or whatever. It just gives them a little look into someone else's life, someone else's choices, values, and all of that.
I'm so glad that you've created this space for your community as well, to really just get down to the core of it and let people just share why, and also just, as I said, just get down to the core of the message and get down to the core of things.
It's so important. So I'm really curious, when did you realize, like, I've really hit on something? So obviously this was a passionate thing for you right off the bat. And you were probably like thinking, I know Kristina and I felt similar when we started this. And you found a little bit of a group right away. When did it start growing and I don't know, snowballing into something bigger? We were like, okay, I'm going to put all my energy and time into this. Or did you do that right off the bat?
I didn't. I've kind of gone back and forth. It's kind of been like one of those things where it's like been a side hustle. Sometimes it's been like a full-time hustle. Sometimes it just kind of goes back and forth. Yeah. I can share a little bit about that with you, but I guess kind of like I've had a couple of those moments, Raquel. So I think the first time was when I shared the very deeply personal like article, aka Facebook post, about like what happened like with me, like my work situation, and so there's that, and then just to have people that I didn't even know like kind of reach out and say like, hey, like, wow, I went through something similar, or man, like I didn't know that this, like I saw you a certain way and I didn't know you were unhappy. Like, wow, it makes me really think about like, I need to check in with myself and make sure that I'm, doing things that are in line with my values, for example. And so just kind of having that, kind of very early stage anecdotal feedback was great. And then after that, I guess just kind of looking around and like reflecting upon like what was actually out there when it came to media, and representative media for people that were like me. I think at that time there were very few publications that maybe have been around for like a while, like a really long time. Like Rice Paper Magazine has been around for a long time. Mochi Magazine has been around for a really long time. And you also have a lot of publications for the Asian Canadian or Asian American audience that are pretty specific, or so maybe it's specifically for women or women who are artists, et cetera, right? And so I wanted Quilty Collective to be something a little bit more broad, because like, oh, I don't want to pigeonhole myself, but B, because I have so many things I want to talk about, or I feel like I don't want to say no to this story just because it doesn't fit in, in this, like box. But I think more than that, I think I also realized that there are so many stories that need to be told, and I don't want to limit the voices of the people in my community. And so, I think I think a lot of that still rings true today, and why we like publish, so many different, I guess like the range of articles that we do. I think another, so I have this thing. Okay, so women entrepreneurs, especially, they get this thing called imposter syndrome. I never thought that I would be that kind of person, where I would experience that, but I realize now, and it was thanks to my managing editor, my current managing editor, his name's Samson. Yeah, I was having a conversation with him one day, and basically, for me as an entrepreneur, I don't know what's enough, especially in the media space. Like, oh, like, is it enough to have this many, like, people visit your site on a regular basis? Is it enough to have, this many people following you on social media before you can consider yourself like a real business or like a brand? Part of me, like a real business to me is like you're actually generating revenue. But I mean, how do you know like you're good enough to like ask someone to pay you money to do what you want to do, right? Like, how do you know, right?
You don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
You don't know. But here's the thing, right? Like, because this space is so new and it's so underserved, I think a lot of what has made us successful is that we have either been first movers for some things, as well as being able to produce like quality content, but also just making the ask, right? And so going back to your original question around how did I know, like, this could be a thing. I think the next thing that really helped me realize that it could be something is when Dove and Refinery 29 approached us to work with them.
How did they find you?
Yeah.
What was it? What did they say?
It was I don't know. Honestly, it probably started off with a Google search, because how else, like, do you start like searching for something? So the campaign that we worked on with them was actually to celebrate women and explore their relationship with their bodies, body positivity, body confidence, and self-esteem. And so they wanted to connect specifically with an Asian Canadian market, an Asian Canadian audience. And so I guess they somehow found us. And if you've ever read Refinery 29's content, you know that it's not really like fluff pieces. I mean, like, sure, there's like some fun pieces, but the reporting is generally pretty good, right? And so I think with that, the person that reached out to me, their partnerships manager, said that, hey, like, we really like your content. We think it really aligns with Refinery 29. We have this client. We think you could be a really good fit. And eventually you find out that it's Dove, and it's like, holy shit, like, wow, okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, like, that, I think that was another situation. And I think even like right now, like, we're currently in a program with Google. So we were one of 10 publishers.
Yes.
One of 10 publishers across North America.
So exciting.
To participate in this program to help us grow our audience. And so it's just like, I don't know, as an entrepreneur, or like someone who has a bit of imposter syndrome, or maybe someone that is just like maybe somewhat of a perfectionist, which I know you've talked about on the podcast before. I think it's just like these little, maybe not so little situations along the way that help me realize, like, wow, okay, cool, we've got something here. Like, people actually want to pay us. People think we have good content. People think we're doing something awesome. But I mean, I think like what just gets me more, like, even, all that aside, is just when we get someone slides into our DM and just says, wow, this story really resonated with me, and I've come across it at a time in my life where I really, really need it. And so just hearing that makes a world of difference.
I also wanted to jump on the imposter syndrome wagon for a second and say that, one of the things, and again, like, I know for me, and I want to know what your thoughts are, I end up building infrastructure and building quality and really checking the content and checking all of these things to mitigate my imposter syndrome. So I right? And so I'm like, you and I, when we did this Clubhouse chat together, you and I thought exactly the same way. It was like, what's the structure? What's the purpose? What's the outcome that you want? What are these things? Because that's the way that my mind works as well, in terms of how do we make sure that it's defensible? How do we make sure our product and our content and our team, our volunteers, whoever it is, they need to buy in to exactly what we're doing so that I don't have to feel like as much of an imposter.
100%. Yeah.
And is that a normal thing? Yeah. And I love to hear that you are saying that, because Raquel, you see me freaking out behind the scenes all the time. Like, even just right before you got on the call, Raquel's like, I hear what you're saying. It's gonna be okay. And I'm like, so what I did want to kind of just dig a little bit more into was, how did you create that? What are your, I guess, your metrics for success for your quality content and building that team for people who are also trying to do this? And this is totally loaded because this is what we're in the middle of right now.
Yeah, so. Happy to. No, that's a fantastic question. And Kristina, I'm exactly the same as you. I think I also have the benefit of having experience in building systems, building teams, building process from the ground up. So you kind of need to know what happens. And I think a lot of times, like, it's so easy to get so focused on that structural piece before you even create something. And so I remember, like, in the very early days, like, one of my best friends, like, running away, I'm just gonna go off screen now. You're gonna hide into the hedge like Homer from The Simpsons. Oh yeah, no, it's like, for me, like, it just took a long time to, like, okay, I'm like, I have to have a business plan. I have to have, like, all this, like, stuff. Like, before I even started creating content. And my dear friend, Kara, she was actually our very first editor-in-chief. So yeah, all my friends, they turned into, like, team members. It's great. Or vice versa, you know?
Oh, we know that. We know that story very well. Hi, Grace.
Right? Yeah. I mean, with that, like, she's like, well, like, you're spending a lot of time on this. You're not going to get it perfect. You just need to just freaking ship something, put something out there, then iterate and keep building. And she is awesome, like, at having these, like, really tough conversations with me. But, like, conversations that really, like, push me. I'm like, okay, yeah, shit, like, you're right. Like, I'm being crazy. Like, let's just do something about it, you know, just get something out the door, as opposed to trying to make things, like, absolutely perfect before presenting it. With that too, I think that, like, even this Google program, though, like, we're, I think, the only ones that are run on a volunteer basis. And the consultants that we work with as part of the program, they're constantly saying, like, wow, like, we're just, like, so impressed you have these systems in place as, like, a volunteer driven organization. And it's so, I think, like, sometimes it does work out that way. And I think, like, when people join our team as new volunteers, they're also impressed, like, wow, like, you have so much structure, but, like, enough for them to still, like, be creative and allow us to have fun
and thrive within it. Yeah, because then they know where they can go, right? Like, there's a lot to be said for exchange of value. And, you know, you and I have spoken about that on the career pathway side a lot, where it's like, well, you know, you can quote unquote volunteer for something, but you know, a lot of the things that I think you're doing is you're providing framework and infrastructure whereby they can gain a lot of value and provide a lot of value at the same time. So there's mutual benefit. And we're building that with Bombshell Brunches right now, is that we're really proud of the people who are working on our team, but we're also just as invested in them. And I think that's the new leadership model of what you've heard me say this before, that facilitative leadership model, where it's like, hey, I'm not better. I'm just here and you're here. How do we continue to create this jungle gym rather than a ladder? And I don't like the analogy of that corporate ladder anymore, because I'm like, it should be a jungle gym. I've been talking about a ladder for the longest time, but careers are a jungle gym, especially nowadays in any kind of creative career. So I love that you say that you've built that infrastructure.
I love that. Yeah. One of the quotes I heard recently from Ed Mylett, and I just loved it, and it totally rang true. So I actually had to find it. But he says, as a leader, nobody owes you anything, but you owe others everything. And I think that's exactly what we're talking about. And I think that's the mindset that you kick into. It's like, okay, you know, you're creating this vision together, and what can I do for you? And that's, I mean, I guess the leaders, we all aspire to be, but.
Well, I don't know though. Like, I agree to an extent, but I don't fully agree with that. Because I've had a conversation in the last week where I'm like, I need attention. I need for you to acknowledge what I'm doing behind the scenes, because nobody else will. I'm not a leader that's just going to give forever. I'm not that person. Like, and I think that when people say like leadership is servitude, I'm like, well, yes, but that's not my kind of leadership. That's why I keep going back to facilitative leadership, where I'm like, I'm leading, but by course of practicality, but that doesn't mean I'm above you. That means I am in this position beside you. But I need as much as you need. I just need different things. And when people, I've heard this before, and I've done a lot of different like coaching, from Tony Robbins to like private career coaching and everything in between, and hypnotherapy. And the thing that really hits me the best to me is recognizing that the actual systemic issue is in the value placed on different positions. Rather than, and that's the systemic, patriarchal, authoritative, top-down mentality that we so often subscribe to. Because it's like, well, if you're at the top of the ladder, then you should be giving to everybody else. But that's not really necessarily true. If you're at the top of the ladder, you should be deconstructing the ladder and using it to make a different structure. That's my opinion on, and that's also a colonialist, post-colonialist view, which is not fully fleshed out in my brain. But I think when we talk about it as coming up into new leadership positions, we have to talk about what's the exchange rather than what can I just give? Because then it's you're in Jesus mode where it's like, I'm just going to give.
I think you both bring up really good points there. I was trying to see how, like, what are some recent examples I can think of that, feed into both kind of perspectives when it comes to leadership. And I think like for myself as editor-in-chief, or even just like, a leader or like the founder of Cold Tea Collective, I think, when you're, talking about what Raquel is talking about, being, serving your team, is like, for me, what that means is making sure that I'm checking in with them, making sure like, hey, do you understand like these changes that we're making? Do you have any questions about it? And just making sure that the whole team is on board. And making sure that, they feel valued, making sure that they feel supported. And I think that, you can take that as a servant leader, you can take that a number of different ways. But I think for myself personally, it comes to, it's really just about being there for people to make sure that they feel like they can come and talk to me about that. And Kristina, and I was thinking about, what you're talking about in terms of facilitative leadership around, you're doing this because you have to, or you're doing it because you're in that position and this is your expertise. I'm, a couple of months ago when I transitioned into the role of editor-in-chief, because I've let some other other very smart people take on the role before me, but I just happened to have to move into this role because of some like team like changes and such. I asked the team, but like, hey, like, just, blank slate. Like, I don't want to just like come here and tell you what to do because you're all smart people. I'm here to help optimize the system and all that kind of stuff and introduce new resources and whatnot. But I want to see, what can you all contribute and what do you all want to learn from each other, right? So it's not just like me talking at people. My favorite kind of meetings, especially now that I'm very busy with a newborn child, my favorite kind of meetings are where someone else does a presentation and they lead a like workshop or something like that, right? And that gives other people the chance to share their expertise, and others the chance to ask some questions and such. And I, of course, get to learn as well. So those are my favorite kinds of meetings.
And that's Raquel's very good at that. Raquel is very much that person. Like, I think that maybe that's what it is with that. And also understanding the context, like when is the right time to be, like you say, a servant leader, or have that Ed Mylett, like, you owing others everything. And I think I think that's also where segue is what a great team is having that healthy difference of opinion where, Raquel and I will sit there and be like, I don't agree with you on this side. And Raquel is like pushing on these things. And we had a really great conversation recently with Sashi from Formation, where she said, she was just like, this is your 80%. So sometimes if we're really coming down to decision-making processes, or, we're having a conversation with the team, and if it's just me and Raquel that it comes down to us making decisions, I'm like, that's your 80%, not my 80%. So you get the right of way. And then I trust that, Raquel is going to know exactly what the right thing is to do. And even if it's not necessarily the right thing, I am fully behind it no matter what. And there's no more conversation.
But we still have our opinions that we're sharing beforehand, which I think is super important, because it's hard to make decisions in a silo. I think it's really hard. So when you have someone you're trusting and you know you have the exact same goal, you know, which we've talked about in length, then
so much.
It's good. It's really good. I mean, we all have our blind spots, right? I'm super gung-ho. I can get excitable super quick. And sometimes I need Kristina to like bring me back down to earth a little bit and say, okay, are you thinking about this, this, and this? I'm like, no, that's great.
Thanks for bringing it to my attention.
I can still run with this. I can still run with it, but I just need to see that 360 degree. And you just can't always do that on your own.
It's really great to have someone to rely on for that, for sure.
Who do you rely on? Because you don't have a co-founder right now. You're on this on your own.
So I rely
not on your own. You have a huge team.
I rely quite a bit on our managing editor, Samson, though. Our personalities are very similar, but also very opposite, which is really cool. So he's actually a lawyer by trade, like that's his day job. But then so his role as managing editor is very focused on the operational side of things. And I'm like more like big picture, creative vision, driving the business strategy. But he like makes sure like shit gets done, and also the people that need to do whatever they need to do they get it done as well, right? But I always like check in with him. I'm like, hey, like in this meeting I said this, like did it come across like the right way? Or you know, what are your thoughts on, you know, this type of new like product that we could work on, or this new, you know, business offering that we could, you know, potentially expand our services into. It's, you know, he's just been like a fantastic person to bounce ideas off of, especially within the organization. And, you know, I think we just have that working relationship where we can be like pretty like blunt with each other as well. And I think like I think it just kind of also comes with like, I'm not super precious with how things are. Like, even though it's like, quote unquote, my organization, I founded it, blah, blah, blah. Like it's there. I know that I am not Cold Tea Collective. The collective part is everyone that's involved, right? And so I recognize that, and that's why I really value the input and the inside experiences of others on the team.
I think that's what I wanted to go back to for a second, because I think that's a really important part of building, scaling, whether it's a volunteer-based, for-profit, non-profit, whatever it is that you're doing or creating, whatever initiative it is. I think what you've done really well is take the time to find the through line. Like when you were talking about, okay, this is why I created Cold Tea Collective in the way that it is, because you wanted to tell all kinds of stories. And I love that you say it's for us, it's by us, for us. And that is the underlying theme by which any of these stories, as long as it fulfills that criteria, seems to fit into that remit, but also it allows people to buy into that. And that includes the team buying into it's for us, by us. We believe in that more than anything else. And I think that the point that I'm wanting to make is a lot of people, when they start an idea, they don't spend the time building the foundation of what that through line actually is. They stop too close to the surface without digging really far down. And I think Raquel and I have been iterating, and we really settled recently on be brave, live full.
Wow.
And Bombshell Brunches is about being brave and living full. And if you're the type of person that is brave and you want to live full, then we're your people. This is what, you know, it's not, and for you, it's, you know, stories for us, by us. And that probably took you a lot longer than people would realize to get to. I mean, it may not have taken you necessarily the same, like a long length of time, but your career and the way that you think allowed you to reach that point. And I want to figure out how to unpack and allow people a way to start thinking about that for themselves, for their career, and for their initiatives. How would you help them to ask those questions?
Ooh, okay. So there's a number of different ways I could respond to that. So for like writing stories for us, by us, for, by, and about Asian Canadians, Asian Americans, Generation Z, or Z, I guess if we're listening in Canada, and millennials. Um, it, how do I say this? I think it comes down to what your core values are. Um, you're talking about that recurring theme, that through line that just goes all the way through, and it's just like you can see it consistently in every single piece of content. I don't know if we've had that since day one, especially since, like, as a new media entrepreneur, I really didn't really know what I was doing. I don't know what I'm doing. They maybe just know a little bit more just from experience, but yeah, exactly, who does? I think that just comes down to me knowing myself, and understanding my core values and making sure that all of that is strung throughout like everything that I do, whether it be like for Cold Tea Collective or within my career. Of course, I only learned that though because I got sidetracked and was in that job that I was completely unhappy in. And sometimes you need to have a breakdown to have a breakthrough, which I'm very grateful for having that experience. It also comes down to, I personally think, like, not seeing, especially as marketers, like Raquel, you'll appreciate this. You're always thinking about, like, what is our target audience interested in? What do they want? Trying to remove, still have your marketer hat on, for example, but also just look at your audience as human beings. So I think, of course, a lot of our stories are like personal stories, people sharing their personal experiences. And so, just asking ourselves, how would we say this to a friend, or what are some experiences of, people in our lives that we could highlight that might be of help to other people. So I think that's been that kind of train of thought has really helped us with that through line, as you say, and in creating content for, by, and about us.
I'm really curious, with 25 volunteers, how, I guess, multiple questions here. One, how you can keep the values aligned, how you can keep the buy-in. And then I also wanted to ask, before I forget, you about the processes, because you said you have a lot of processes already and really good onboarding. So what would be your top things that you've implemented that you're just like, I'm so thankful that this is implemented and would never want to let go of?
Okay, I'll start with the process question and then I'll go back to values and buy-in. So the process question is, okay, so what have we implemented that I'm like so happy that we have it. So as a marketer, as a planner, former event planner as well, I'm so glad that our very first editor-in-chief implemented Asana, which is a project management software.
Yes.
By that, to help us manage our publication timelines, as well as, it's also acts as a guide to any new editor, for example, all the different steps that they need to take. Of course, we have like an editorial manual. Yeah,
You
okay.
can keep going.
I was like, oh gosh, the sound is a little bit different there. Yeah. Yeah, so of course there's, like our editor's manual that like helps with that as well. But just having that checklist of things to do and just having that clear communication and making it a habit and expectation that people are communicating, whether like about their progress or if they have any questions or any feedback within Asana, just to make sure it's all tracked, especially with having a remote team. Like we've got people in New York, LA, Chicago, Montreal. Like it's so important to have that. Not everybody meets every month, for example, but just having that as a place of transparency and that one source of truth has been really great, just fantastic. When we had a larger core team outside of our editorial team that focused a little bit more on like the ops side of things, when we had that, right now it's really small, so it's 4. We don't have as many meetings about that specifically, unless it's for the Google program. When we had that, I also implemented I guess it's kind of like a business management framework called the Entrepreneur's Operating System, so EOS. So some people, like especially small businesses, might really, really buy into that. And it's really just meant to make sure that you are hitting your KPIs as well as, any like that you're being transparent about accountabilities, as well as when things are going off track and how you actually resolve issues. So I had a lot of experience in doing that when I worked in strategy and operations at a creative agency. And so just having that, I think those two pieces have been really instrumental in making sure that we have, process and structure in place. And so, as I mentioned, my colleague Samson's our managing editor. He's the one that does all the onboarding, making sure that people are aware of, like, this is where you go to for this, like, this is a process, making it clear from the very beginning. And it usually goes pretty smoothly after that. So pretty happy to see that. Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. And how do you create, I guess, internal community? Because I normally live in Amsterdam. Wow. And then most of our team is here. And now Kristina is going to be traveling more as well, now that COVID is kind of calming down. Hopefully there's no 4th, 5th, 6th waves. But as we look at that, I always struggle to figure out, because I'm such an in-person person. I want to bring my team together and I want to see their faces and I want to laugh with them. And how do you do that with a team that is so international?
We actually also have one team member in Seoul, like in Korea, in South Korea. Yeah.
Wow.
So, and one of our team members in Chicago is going to be moving there for her master's program in a little bit also. So also international, but that's a great question. I think that even if COVID didn't happen, I think we would still kind of adopt the method of having like a monthly meeting. We used to have them in person, but yeah, these meetings, editorial meetings happen monthly, and we've got like an agenda kind of thing. We've got slides. We've got, if people can't join, they can refer back to that, for example. But when it comes to like community and building those relationships, you have to put in the work. Like as a leader, right? We're talking about what it means to be a leader. Like actually messaging people like, "Hey, welcome to the team. Just want to let you know, like I know that we might not be working so closely together, but I just want to let you know that I'm here if you have any questions. If you have any questions about this other thing specifically, go to this other person," kind of thing. But also like, tell me like a little bit more about like what made you decide to join. If I'll ask these questions if I wasn't in the initial interview process, for example, and I don't know that information. But other than that, it sounds a little bit funny, but we actually have a WhatsApp group of like people like that 25 people, but also people that were with us previously, or external contributors.
Fun.
And so anytime something goes down in the Asian community that we're just like, what the hell, or like angry, we can collectively be upset about, or collectively like celebrate, for example, or like, well, someone will throw a link and we're like, "Hey, did you see this thing? Like, isn't that ridiculous?" Or like, "Oh, isn't this awesome?" So it's like, just like building that community. It's fun, just making it personal. It doesn't even have to be anything about Cold Tea Collective. It can just be like, "Hey, who's watching the Olympics right now? Like, what sports are you watching? Oh, did you see, Maggie McNeil, like when it's just talking about current events, building that community and camaraderie is great.
Casual community,
it's
right?
Casual,
it's like it's a casual.
But we also, it's funny though, because or maybe not funny, but we also talk about very deep topics on there too, like cultural appropriation, or like people feel comfortable enough to share like, "Oh, I'm going through this at work. This person that I'm working with is very racist," or something like that, or like there are these systems of oppression that I'm working with it. I don't know how to deal with it. How would you guys deal with it? So the group like shares their feedback, and sometimes they turn into articles, so it's
wow.
I love that. Raquel, we got to do that.
You should.
Let me borrow that.
Stealing all your ideas.
Please do. Let me know how it goes. But something though, I gotta say, like, if you want to build that kind of community and that kind of culture where you're so openly communicating, is that you have to lead by example, right? So I think like probably one of the first times where we started talking about like workplace trauma, or like, just like systems that were, oppressive systems that we're trying to work through and work around, or, bust out of and break down. I think one of the first times was when I said like, "Hey guys, I just want to get your opinion on something. I attended this workshop. The facilitator said something that was like pretty racist, and like it was very much a macro aggression to me. Not to me specifically, but what would you do in this situation? I'm thinking of emailing the organization that hosted this event. What do you think?" And so, just like kind of putting yourself out there and leading by example to demonstrate what kind of conversations can we have in this space, and also reminding people that it is a safe space for them to share that, and just remind people like, don't you don't need to use names, don't use specifics if you don't want that, et cetera, et cetera. So I think with that, like it's really just helped us, even though we don't see people, a lot of people have never met, of course, it just builds that community.
I love that. So that's such a great tip. That's awesome. And okay, so we're going to run out of time, but I do want to, you know, highlight the fact that, you know, we've had a conversation recently about motherhood, about, you know, having a baby. And then, I mean, I can't believe you had a child. And then within like 2 days, I saw you on Clubhouse. I saw you organizing things. I saw you doing stuff. And I was like, how is this possible? And then I stepped back and I was like, I'm really feeling a lot of anxiety about if I want to have kids, what that's going to do to my career, what that's going to do to my life. And I'm looking at this person who is just does not, I mean, you know, you don't look like how so many people have painted motherhood to me in so many ways. And so I wanted to firstly like acknowledge you and thank you for that, because it can be really easy to kind of drink that Kool-Aid of like when you have a child, like your life is over and you're done now. And I don't want to discount how difficult motherhood is, but I also don't want to feel like it's prohibitively impossible for me, if I'm ambitious, to be able to have a child. So how did you navigate, and what was your kind of mentality surrounding, okay, I'm going to go for this. I'm going to try or not try or whatever that is. Like you ended up with a child one way or another. How did you navigate? How are you navigating right now?
Yeah. I mean, that's certainly something that I took into consideration. And so I kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier, how there was a few points where like Cold Tea Collective was like my main focus, or like I was doing that plus like other contracting. And so I didn't have a full-time job. And so actually for just over a year leading up to my mat leave, I have a full-time job, so which I'm currently on maternity leave from. And that allowed me to really kind of get into the, you know, back into like, you know, my marketing communication, like mindset and like managing my time and all that kind of stuff. But then when, you know, baby came, or was about to come, I knew that like things were going to change. So a lot of the times I was very just kind of non-committal for like the first like month. I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how my energies, first off, I don't know what my energy is going to be like. I know my time is going to be all over the place. I know sleep is going to be fleeting. I'm going to be perpetually tired. So I basically just like did not commit to anything. But that being said, I want to, oh my gosh, like I have to say, like, I'm so fortunate because I have an amazing, amazing husband who, you know, very fortunately works from home. He's obviously like still working full time. I'm sitting in his office right now, but because he's out at his office, and so I was able to do this. But he's incredible, providing me the support, making sure that I felt supported. And that I could get like breaks, even just like shower or like brush my teeth. My mom is over right now helping watch my baby while I had this lovely conversation with the two of you. But yeah, like I wouldn't be able to do it without the family support. A lot of the times too, I find that I am, you know, for example, going on a walk while on a call. I'm like pushing the stroller while like I'm on a call for something. But if it has to be something where I'm on the computer, then it's then I'll have to set aside that time. I also try to make sure that I set aside, even for myself personally, I need like a structure, or like a schedule. So I have like a couple days a week. So Tuesdays and Thursdays, I have to work on cold tea. Random Saturdays or Sundays, I have to work on it as well. For me, it's a lot of work, but I also see it as something for myself, even though externally it may not seem like it's like, oh yeah, this is me, like me having fun, like being on the computer or like having calls or whatever, but it actually is. It breathes life into me, and if I didn't have this, I think I would go nuts. And so yeah, because actually having conversations with adults is great. And
no baby brain.
I've heard that.
Yeah, having the conversations with adults is great, and like learning stuff. So once again, that Google program, like amazing, the Google News Initiative. It's just been so great to, you know, be able to say like, oh, I have a schedule. My appointment is I have to log into this call. Then I have some quote unquote homework to do after this, and I'm building my business. And so I think largely the way that I took a look at maternity leave was that I wanted to make sure that I was, of course, giving the time and attention and energy and love to my growing child, but also I knew that the kind of person that I am, I wouldn't be able to do that properly if I didn't also give that to myself.
I love that. I love that statement, and I think that's something that's been so it's kind of been undersaid for a long time. But, you know, my friend Bernadette, actually, I said to her, because her daughter's 12, I think 12 now, and Eva was like, I made it really clear when my daughter was growing up, like, you know, I will always be 100% here for you, but I am not 100% for you. Like, I need my life. I need to have my life, and you don't get to be, you know, I mean, I don't know about you, but like my mother gave up so much for us. Like she centered, like we were the center of her universe, and she made that choice. But that was also generationally, culturally, like that's what you do. You look after your children and you put them before everything else. And I for the longest time, I was like, I just don't know if I can do that. And I actually finally am at the point where I'm like, I just don't know if that is actually what I want for myself or my children. You know, if I do choose to.
You get to actually have that thought process. And I was listening to an interview with Maria Shriver, and she was talking about how when she went into journalism, first of all, it was like fighting tooth or nail just to get a spot. And then once you were in there, you know, you had to come back a week after giving birth, because otherwise it was just like, don't even try. So you're either a stay-at-home mom or coming back right after giving birth. And now we were like, okay, so now, well, in certain countries, it's not all countries, but Canada, we're very lucky, and a lot of people get a year of mat leave. So that's an option that they can take. But then I think with the generation before us, or maybe even now, some people might feel guilty about taking that because it backslides your career, as it shouldn't, but it does, let's be real. Or they feel out of it, or they don't want to take that long, or they have a passion project or whatever. It's kind of cool that we can see the fact that we actually get to make those decisions. So then do we bring in a nanny? Do we have the family to support us? Do we have a husband that can pitch in? Or in Holland, both parents oftentimes will do 4-day weeks. So you work longer hours, but, you know, between the two of those work days, you can be caretaking the kids. Other places will do nannies. Like, you know.
In France, apparently they pay for childcare.
I think it's only for the first 9 months they have a...
Okay.
Oh, wow.
But still, I mean, that's amazing.
That's huge.
That's amazing.
Can we just move to France?
Yeah, let's do it.
Don't mind if I do.
Yeah, but it's just cool. It's cool that you can make these decisions. You can navigate it, and
I think I have residual. But I think I have residual annoyance, I guess I would say, that, you know, for so often, like the traditional male stereotype is that they can figure it out or make it work. And for women, it's like, I always feel like there's this really weird, like cultural and gender-based guilt where I'm like, wow, I'm leaving my child, or like, you know, Raquel, your mum is so strong and she's such a powerhouse of a woman. And it's like, well, you know, growing up with someone like that as a role model is so rare. And for me, my mother was very much like that, but she chose to stop working. She was like, no, I want to be there for my children, and also, you know, but she's also the type of person that would be like, I'm going to be there for my grandchildren. I'm going to be there. You know, she went and spent so much time with family members, you know, throughout their childhood, you know. So
I think
it's having freedom of choice.
And that freedom of choice is a privilege, right? And so, it's a privilege. And at the end of the day, you just got to do what works for you. I mean, I've got a friend that, you know, she's the one that's at work and her husband's at home with raising their son, right? And just because it worked out better that way for them and their family. And I've also got, you know, like friends in the States where, you know, they can only be off for like, you know, 2 months to 4 months, like not even, right? It's just, it's brutal. Insane. But yeah, so I really see this as a huge privilege. And yeah, honestly, I wouldn't be able to do what I do without the support of my family, right? But yeah, I mean, as you said, like it's a choice. A lot of the times, generational, cultural. I just think about, not even just like the early stages, but like later on in life, like what kind of example do I want to be for my kid? How will my choices impact the way that he views family, like me as his mom, and his, how he sees his dad, and like maybe how he might want to consider raising his children if he decides to have like a family later on down the road, right? And so all these have a knock-on effect, and I believe it's called intergenerational trauma. But so like
I think that's the term.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, just kind of not until you go through it, like I'm starting to understand like the impact of like the way that I was raised and like how that impacted a lot of my choices today as well, but also understand that I need to define my own path too, and I have the privilege to do so.
I love that. Well, on that note, thank you for reducing some of my anxiety. You always manage to do it. Every time I have a conversation with Natasha, I'm like, it's gonna be and if it's not, I'm calling Natasha.
Yeah, anytime.
So thank you for spending all this time with us. I love the gem drops. Pearls of Wisdom is the name of the podcast that you can check out, and I really highly encourage you to go to Cold Tea Collective, whether you are of Asian descent or not, just for some really wonderful, very high quality content that is wonderful to read. There's a survey right now that you can fill out as well if you're an avid reader, if you're a new avid reader, which I'm sure you will be. It'd be great to fill out that survey.
Thank you.
And Natasha, I'm just so looking forward to meeting you in person and hugging you for the longest time, and going on a bubble tea tour with Yumi and Raquel, hopefully.
Yes, let's do it. I'm ready.
Yeah,
you're so ready.
Yes. Well, thank you both so much for having me, and it's been a pleasure, and once again, really admire the work that you're doing. Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening, Bombshells. In order to continue to elevate, subscribe and don't forget to click that little bell so you can get notified every time we have a new badass brunch. Until next time, stay focused, fierce, and fabulous.